Thanks for joining us for Political Talk on another PolitiPod Live. Tonight we'll cover the Colbert Report, ICE issues, Epstein reflux, and the Trump dump. We will also have our segments Economy and Democrats, Establishment versus Progressive. I'm Tom Bickle.
I'm Hannah Soldner.
And I'm Matt Nisanoff.
But we'll start with
How about the Colbert Report?
their report.
Yeah. Hey, you may have heard about this, actually. Colbert outed his CBS masters in some of its double backstabbing, along with their friend, FCC chair, and shriveled potato impersonator, Brandon Carr. They told Colbert that he could not have a strong Democratic candidate on to interview, and Carr went on from there to talk about how there's an equals doctrine that if you have one candidate on, then you have to have other candidates on because that's giving equal time, which is an interesting concept and one that actually existed once upon a time, but hasn't for several decades. In fact, it was part of what the FCC dismantled to allow the rise of Fox and right-wing media, ironically. But they said you have to ditch that guy, and we're not going to let you have him on your broadcast show. Colbert picked up on that and said, okay, well, I won't have him on my broadcast show. I'll record the interview, and I'll put it up on my YouTube channel, which they had said that's streaming, so there you go. That was perfectly legit. But the bottom line is having him on the broadcast show would have been perfectly fine and perfectly within the rules of the FCC and any law that exists. But it doesn't fit in to the Brandon Carr saying scary things department. So that's where we are on that. I think he played it safe by going with the having it on YouTube, but he did not play it safe by exposing all of this at the top of his show and going over all of the details, saying who said what when, and making it perfectly clear what happened, the shenanigans that were going on there. What do you guys think?
Hannah, after you.
Okay, well, not looking to get canceled on my first outing here on the show, but I think it's actually interesting looking at this Who's Right graphic because CBS and the FCC are both being a little bit absurd here, especially for a comedy show. It's not, and like there was whole like, not only is it like good for this, but I mean, like it wasn't that long ago that like Trump hosted a whole SNL episode. Like where was the fairness doctrine there, or everything, and the whole like explicit like marching orders of Fox News and before that like Rush Limbaugh and all the like sort of AM radio was to be like a conservative counterpoint, and so like that can only sort of exist with an explicit like step away from this fairness doctrine.
I don't know why they keep messing with my man Steven. I don't know. They don't win. He wins every time. He comes away smelling like a rose. His public approbation only goes through the roof again, and he's going to go on to bigger and better. And they're going to be CBS, the mouthpiece of the Fourth Reich. It's terrible. They're just wrecking the institution brick by brick, and I mean, I don't know what. I wonder if there's something else he could have done. He bowed to pressure, probably, and went with YouTube. But the irony there is that it got 23 million views or something like that, way more than the TV show would have gotten. Barbra Streisand effect, in full effect. That's what occurs to me.
It's also, it's been a while since I've brushed up on my U.S. law, but I feel that it actually says that people are supposed to be given equal opportunity. Like it's not that you have two candidates up there every time one candidate goes up there and you make sure they all get, this person spoke a word and this person spoke a word. It's not a debate, so and it's not like, nor have I watched every episode of Late Show, but I'm sure he's had candidates on from all over the political spectrum. He probably invites whoever is kind of interesting and doing something, and so I feel like it's not even like he said, I'm going to have this person on and like no Republicans. He was just like, hey, this is a person running in an interesting election, and I thought I would interview them.
Exactly. An election that's happening now. So you're going to talk to this guy. You're going to talk to him now. It'll be wonderful to speak to him as a congressman when he wins. But my point is that you're trying to talk to him during the race, which makes absolute sense and which is happening now. The other thing I'll point out about the graphic is, you have Colbert there in the middle, and who is correct or who is right, and you have the FCC and the CBS who are now alt-right, and there's no place far enough off the screen to put them. They wouldn't even be there if you put them in alignment with their political philosophy. So that's
I like.
Go ahead.
If I could add before we get on to the next. First of all, they shouldn't tell him he should have anybody on he wants. As far as the FCC is concerned, I mean, sure, CBS is paying the bills. They have every right to put on what and how they want. But the FCC shouldn't give a darn, a good gosh darn, who he has on. And isn't the government propping up one side of the argument in the interest of equity and fairness, that DEI crap that they're so pissed off about all the time now, but it's on in their behalf, of course. No, you got to have, we need fairness, and so you can't have a Democrat on. It just seems ridiculous to me.
You're coming dangerously close to supporting the first rights of free speech. I don't know if you're going to get in trouble. I don't know. Can we expect ICE to be busting down your door here in a minute?
Fortunately, we're only online. We're not on CBS, so
breaking into the feed.
Yeah.
Right? Huh. Hang on. Oh, I gotta go.
We're gonna be the next. We're gonna be the next Max Headroom over here. Breaking onto the feed.
Nice, excellent points, and yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. As you mentioned, the next up is one of our segments, our regular segments. This one on the economy. Hannah, I don't get it. Explain the economy to me.
Well, that's a good question. I thought I would come in here my first day and lead this thing. So you're not going to get it anymore once we're at the end here. But I thought, recently there was a person in the government who decided to shut down some really important chats about Epstein. That will come up more later. By mentioning the Dow was over 50,000, and why should we talk about anything if the Dow is over 50,000? And so I thought, we have this segment on economy, and I just thought I would bring up some interesting points. So I checked it out. Tesla is up today. They have a huge market cap. Huge market cap. They are worth more than the big five automakers combined. More than Ford, more than Toyota, more than Hyundai, more than Daimler. Not individually combined. They're worth more than, last I checked, they were worth 3 times more than all of them combined. And yet they're the 8th largest auto manufacturer as far as sales in the world. They're not even the highest EV. There's one out of China that sells more than them. But they are doing well in the Dow or whatever they're in. They're doing well in the stock market. So I guess that means they're right. And then likewise, I saw NVIDIA, the chip maker who does a lot of AI stuff. They're up today. After Amazon said that they would purchase millions of dollars of their chips, likely for AI, because they also do like graphics for like gaming computers. But this comes just days after a post that somebody put up on Reddit that went viral, that their analytics AI had been hallucinating all their analytics numbers for the past 3 months. Yet they're doing better than ever. And then lastly, I wanted to mention that World Liberty Financial, the Trump spawn-owned cryptocurrency, had their big launch today, their big launch party. And this comes just a couple days after it was learned that the Trump family has made $1.2 billion off of that by selling a minority stake, mind you, to Sheikh Tarun bin Zayed Al Nahyan, also known as the Spy Sheikh. He bought him a minority stake, in theory, to also get chips for AI. And so they've made billions of dollars out of that now, just in the past couple months.
That's probably
Yeah, and so they're celebrating it with a launch. And so, I just wanted to note those things. And then one last note, the Dow is actually below $50,000 as of a couple of days ago. And so now that it's below, I think it's fair for us to complain.
Did you say below 50,000?
It is below now. It was above a couple of days ago when we didn't have to care about anything else. And now it's below.
We need a new hearing.
It closed at 49,662.66.
So 49K instead of any other number.
Yeah.
It's down to 49K. Interesting. But yeah, I think that, first of all, the whole reason that it was brought up was fallacious in the first place. It was simply a thing to say to try to distract from other questions. And that's par for the course for this clown car of government that's been wheeled into our democratic republic. And so anything they can do to change the subject, and literally any words that they can speak when somebody asks them a question they don't want to answer, and anything that is true or not, usually not true, but occasionally they bump into something that is an actual fact, and that can happen. But you know, the whole point about the Dow and the market, as I understand it, is that it's constantly changing. That's the point of it. You buy a value and you hang on for the ride until you want to sell. You can choose to sell where you're, at the time of your choosing, but you have to be smart enough to be to be knowledgeable of what's happening as to whether or not you're selling higher or lower, or where you're putting where you're taking out your value, because that's the value you're going to have when you take it out.
Right. Also, as that Tesla thing shows, that it's the most profitable, most valuable car company, but only the 8th most profitable, doesn't really reflect any kind of reality.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent point. Tom, how much money you got on you?
How much do you need? No, I think these are great points. 50,000, the $50,000 that the Dow is either above or below just is hilarious. I don't know what to add to that.
I heard it was 49,000. Yeah, I heard that.
I just mean the fact that Bondi said that at all. She was about to brag that it's over $50,000. It's not measured in dollars. I don't know if she knows that or if that was a slip or what, but it smacks of the same incompetence we've grown used to.
Yeah, it was a big number, and of course, big numbers should be related to money.
Big number, good. Everybody knows that.
It must have been $50,000. Too funny. Excellent point. So we will move on from the economy. Thank you for the summary, Anna, and getting us into the issues. And speaking of, we have some about ICE next. And I think we'll just dive right into it. I think everyone pretty much has an understanding of who these folks are and what they're doing. So we can look at specific issues or specific things that are going on. For instance, a 25-year-old Border Patrol supervisor, Andres Wilkinson, has been charged with harboring an illegal alien.
Yep, that's how that went. Harboring an illegal alien, indeed. End quote. A girlfriend who feds say also is his niece. How about that? I have that on my bingo card.
I pulled this up just because I thought the headline in itself was absurd, but I thought I would pull it up to do my due news diligence. And here's this. The department alleges that an officer and supervisor living in Laredo, Texas, with a woman who had overstayed her visa and is now in the U.S. illegally. The woman entered the U.S. on a temporary visa. That's not what's important. Wilkinson allegedly provided her financial support, including... No. Okay. The Justice Department said that he was aware of unlawful immigration status, yet maintained a romantic relationship with her. It goes on to say, according to the complaint, officials collected information according that the woman is actually his niece and that she's married to another man. But the complaint also says that her husband, who had filed a green card application, canceled the petition, and then he followed. And then a month later, she and her daughter were investigated for her relationship with this guy, and this guy uh, is the daughter of a person that he had listed as his brother in a background investigation. So, yeah, it seems like it's all just whatever they can do to kind of skirt this, which kind of isn't that, I'm here for, obviously the crackdown is absurd and I'm pretty open when it comes to immigration, but isn't this, like you said earlier, isn't this the whole argument that they have been putting out, that they've just been making up like this thing? And so this person claimed this person was his brother, and then she's his daughter, but then her husband didn't allow her to, didn't fulfill her green card request. And so she started a relationship with him, maybe just to lie to get the green card. Who knows? Um,
All of it illegal. All of it in the vein of all the things that they're complaining about the people they're trying to track down and hunt. But
exactly.
they're doing them. They're part of this sort of current Republican administration where every accusation is a confession.
Exactly.
How about we move on to the next little sub story there, Tom?
Absolutely. ICE and Border Patrol leaders deny calling Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist during a Senate meeting, contradicting Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem's claim the label came from Border Patrol reports. I think we all saw them call Alex Preddy a domestic terrorist as well as they did Renee Good. And to turn around and say they didn't say it, that's all fine and good in the papers. But once you get in under oath, let's hope it has teeth.
Yeah,
Well,
it definitely. Oh, go ahead.
no, please go right ahead, Hannah.
It definitely reminds me of some of the, I feel like domestic terrorist is something they're launching at everybody, be they protesters who are doing something literally in the First Amendment, or people who are undocumented or who are trans for just existing, or, whatever. Anybody that they don't like, they like slapping them with this domestic terrorist thing. But as you say, Tom, like, you can say some words, but when you have to defend them in court, then that actually means like penalties, like legal and financial penalties. And you've seen this with some of the lawyers they've hired with other things where they'll say something and then the lawyer is like, oh no, I could get disbarred for lying. It's not just like
Oops. Hannah stepped out of the room for a moment, but what I will say is we'll see if we can get right back up. Oh, okay. There we go.
sorry.
No worries, you're back. And you were saying.
Oh, I was planning my domestic terrorism behind scenes. Anyway, no, it's just like they tell these lies, as you can say if you shouldn't actually be able to say them on TV, but if you're just saying stuff off the cuff, right? The same way I could say whatever here, but then when you have to go to courts or whatever, and especially any lawyer who has their job on the line is not going to, they're not going to, it's almost the opposite, right? Like if you're a toady, then you toe the party line to get things. But if you're a lawyer and you toe the party line, you might lose your job and everything. So, these are people who actually have, they can't just make these words up. Domestic terrorist means something.
Right. And that's the whole thing they've been doing for all these years, is that they will say anything because they know that the idiocracy wants it. It's red meat. It feeds them. It will get them excited, and they'll do what they'll follow their commands if they are just scared enough, and scaring them is easy. You use words. But just like with all the election stuff, where Trump kept talking about the issues he had with the election, and every time he went to court, what was it, 40 times or something, and every single one he lost because the lawyers, when faced with a judge, said, "Oh yeah, no, we're not debating the validity. The validity's fine. We want to talk about some other issue," and tried to distract. So you're absolutely right. It's the exact same thing, the same old thing in a different wrapper. Tom, anything to wrap that one up?
Well, I mean, I want to point out that these people do get held accountable in court, especially if they lie in court. But even if they tell the court the God's honest truth, if they've been out walking around for the last 180 days blasting lies at full intensity, I've seen it's anecdotal in my head. I can't name the case, but I've read news accounts where the judge will take them to task for that, and it'll cost them. They come in there with no credibility, and they leave with even less. That's good, and we need to keep seeing that happen. So I do want to point out that does happen. In my cynical little heart, sometimes it's hard to remember that there are still institutions, or at least pieces of them, holding fast for now. So there was that. I guess that's all I had that was relevant.
Fair enough. And I'll mention one other issue under the ICE issues, and that is that Representative Jamie Raskin from down in Maryland posted on X that he paid a surprise visit to one of the ICE facilities in Baltimore, and they did respect that and let him in. And he said what he saw was absolutely disgusting. It's all of the things that people are saying, people who are in their own, their own feces, their own urine. They're having a lack of water. They're not getting water. They're certainly not getting medications and things that they need on time. And conditions are like more like a third world country, which apparently, Donald Trump's war on America is making us. So I guess that's where we are.
Yeah, and the
But
food is putrid. They don't get access to medical care or lawyers. They're basically just locked in a can, and then they watch them rot. People are dying of things like what is it, dysentery, where you can't wash your hands enough to keep your your hands and your mouth clean. It's absolutely, it's untenable, and if anything should get us in the streets, that should do it. And I wish we were doing more about that. It's unseen. There's no journalism. You can barely crowbar a representative in there, a congressperson. They're supposed to have free and easy access, and they keep getting blocked at the door. And that's not because it's all fine in there. And if you think people aren't being physically abused, sexually abused, injured, murdered, sold, bought, we don't even know the horrors, and we may never, because there's people who aren't getting their medication. It's not good. Anyway, I'm glad Jamie Raskin is pushing it. These people, these Congress people, are right to demand at-will inspections, and it is beyond disturbing that they're either not getting in, or what they're finding is routinely, always. I don't know if they've ever come out and said, "Hey, that was pretty good." None of that. It's always a nightmare. It's always a shit show. It's always an episode of Saw. It's untenable, and it's to our great shame.
Yeah.
Anna, would you like to chip in?
I think Tom said, all the points. I mean, it's so horrifying, it's hard to speak about, right? And it's not, I feel like it's probably not dissimilar from what was happening at Abu Ghraib, or, all these other things. And there's this, I think that, Tom's right. There should be this, like, if there's no problem, let people just see and be open. And I also think that there's, with some of the people in the administration and some of the people at home, they're probably excited about what's happening. They probably are into the dehumanization and whatever. And like, these would be, it's so disgusting to see the like layers, right? Like he said, these are cells that people should be held in for I think a day at most or something. That was like their design. And then they're held in there and they're overcrowded and whatever. So it's not just like something we can like tweak slightly to make a better idea. You know, this it's terrible on top of terrible on top of terrible. But I think that you are right, Tom, that it's not something we should look away from. You know, I don't know if we need to torture ourselves by like watching. There's probably no video, but if there is, but I do think it's something we should be honest with ourselves about.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
one way to be more honest with ourselves, is to see more media coverage of it. We should be sneaking drones and decoys into places like that and getting firsthand accounts. We should be talking to people. There's got to be a way to slip a cell phone or a USB headset or something into that place. But I'm sure our finest journalistic minds are working on it. But when the stories come out, I don't know. This used to be the type of thing that would crack open the country. Anymore, there's a lot of people who don't care one way or the other.
and with that, I think we will move on to
This
a news.
episode is sponsored by antidepressants.
It's all a lot. That's certainly true. There is a segment that we've talked about for a while and we've never actually had on. And so this will be its first event. It's not just Hannah who's making their premiere debut on this episode. This segment is also a first timer. And this is something we're calling Democratic Establishment versus Progressive. And there's, of course, a long history of this, and there's a whole lot that's gone on. I think one of the most um, prevalent abuses between the two would be between the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Bernie Sanders campaign and what happened there. And I don't know that we'll go into too much detail about that, although we can. But basically, what happened was the Clinton campaign got together with the DNC, who's supposed to be the Democratic National Committee, who's supposed to be the party, the official party of the federal level, and is supposed to focus itself on getting candidates to run for office. And here's a case where there were multiple candidates and they had to try to pick one. And apparently they took it a step too far and they colluded with the Clinton campaign against the Sanders campaign, which they're not supposed to do. Uh, and you could tell they weren't supposed to do it because, of course, they denied it. And it took actually being exposed to actually bring forward what had happened. And it had. And this shows a struggle that's always been going on a little bit between the establishment and those who are progressive. And that happens on all the levels of government, federal, state, local. I know on the local side, we here who are in Brooklyn have a very staunch um, example of that. And there's a party boss running the local party who is very vindictive and very turns the keys to power effectively. And there's a whole bunch of progressives who have, for the past, well, since the Obama campaign, have been saying, just let us get involved with the party. And she says, no, yeah, it's not happening. Don't want you. Have a nice day. And so there's a tension that's been ongoing, and it's being played out in the political field on elections and about primaries and this kind of stuff. What that means is the establishment is focused more on how to deal with the primaries than they are looking at the general elections in Kings County, New York, and that has resulted in a number of Republicans getting elected in southern Brooklyn. In fact, the whole section looks blood red if you look at it on a map, political map nowadays. And they've won a number of seats, and it's kind of embarrassing. I think it's just how in the world do 1.2 million Democrats, registered Democrats, in the county wind up losing the Republicans, but more so, there's a local body called the county committee that's supposed to help run the local party, and there's 4,000 seats on it, and we've never gotten more than 3,000 filled. Maybe it's 2,000 on occasion, sometimes three. But we've never had all 4,000 seats, although we have 1.2 million registered Democrats. So I don't know how the math works out there. I don't know how that happens, but it's certainly something that is, I think, a staunch relief of this idea between how the establishment and the progressives view activism differently, as in the progressives want to, and the establishment does not. But and that's what this segment's all about. How are the two sides moving forward in the primary election last year, when 2025 was a very staunch, once again, a very staunch example, with Andrew Cuomo running as an establishment Democratic Republican somewhere in there, and Zoran Mondani running as a Democrat and Democratic Socialist, and but running as a Democrat. I mean, he was on the Democratic ticket, running for the Democratic nomination. That's being a Democrat. And everybody up to a half hour after the polls closed swore up and down, Cuomo's got this. Cuomo's in. There's no way anyone would even vote for that other guy. And then about 45 minutes after the count started, that changed. And it changed very rapidly, because within 15 minutes of that, Cuomo conceded and the race was done. So when people have a say in it, it comes out a little differently. I don't know if there's anyone else want to chip in on this for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that uh, when it comes to the Clinton versus Sanders, when it comes to anything with Hillary Clinton, there's always this like difficulty of that, like she has faced some very unfair criticism and some very fair criticism, and so I think it's fair to be like, um, and this thing about what happened with Sanders isn't necessarily her at the center, um, and then when it comes to the election, I also live in Brooklyn. When it comes to what happened with Zoran Mamdani, like it ended up being this like interesting like Cuomo, if and you might not just be as aware of this. I don't know what people are aware of if they don't live in New York, et cetera, et cetera. But like he last lost his job for like multiple accusations of like sexual impropriety. So like it doesn't even have to be, even if you didn't like the politics of Mamdani, did you really want that guy? And then I don't know what's worse between him and Adams. Um, so I guess probably Adams, but it's all bad. Adams was actually convicted of things, so that's why I said that.
No, he was just
But
corrupt. Yeah, but Cuomo was corrupt as well, and he faced charges, and he had to back him down. So
but
Yeah,
it,
he molested the young ladies and he killed some old ladies.
yeah, well,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's interesting, to see this. The establishment is so established that literally in like a lot of the debates and a lot of these other things, they weren't even about what Mamdani thought. And then a lot of his, he has his policies, but in a lot of the debates and even like his sort of statements before, a lot of them were him just being like, my beliefs aren't really that radical. Like he's like, I want to change the tax level to the tax level in New Jersey. Like, do you think they're, you know, some, communist pinko mecca or whatever? No offense, that was tongue in cheek. But like, yeah, and so I think that he had to do this constant like, um, basically it ended up being less about, he got his good message across about like buses and rent freezes and stuff, but he had ended up having to do a bunch of like fighting against his own party, actually to the point where in some of the debates he was his arguments were more in tune to the Republican, not that they believe similarly, but they were both like, you really are going to vote for Cuomo? Like, what are you doing here? And at least like Sliwa, I didn't like his ideas, but at least he was honest about them.
That is certainly true.
Yeah.
Certainly true. But I also think that was as part of his strategy. Honestly, I think Cuomo's strategy was go after the Republicans. So he started talking to the Republicans as constituents, and that's fine. He can do it any way he wants. And but what it did do was there were Democrats who were establishment Democrats who were ready to support him, and I mean, a lot of people who I hear from who say, "Oh, we were ready to get behind him. He just stopped being a Democrat. But how could we do anything? He was talking. He was doing all the Republican talking points, and I couldn't find a way to get there to support him, even though I supported him as the candidate. So he cut his own, let's say nose to
Yeah.
spite his face.
I feel like it's something that I've come up across with our party broadly, where it's just like, especially when people sort of skew and like sort of move moderate to get more like moderate votes. And I guess that there's something to that, but sometimes it gets this idea where it's like, aren't you supposed to believe that our ideas are actually like the good ideas? Because I mean, I think that like, also sorry, Tom, if you want to talk, I'm taking up all your space, but like there is, we like to talk about like Democrats and Republicans as being so opposite. And I'm pretty progressive for a progressive. So I should in theory be on the even more opposite. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's like the idea is the same in common, right? We want to be able to have a decent job, and we want to be able to support our family, and we want to be able to live a happy life, and so like people of different politics might have radically different views and maybe even insulting views to me, but like um I think one of the nice things about Mamdani is that he first went to people and asked what their issue was, and when they're like, I'm a street cart vendor and meat is much more expensive than it used to be and it's crushing my bottom line, and he was like, okay, this is how our side of the aisle believes that we should fix that. Do you think, does that make sense to you? And they would be like, yeah. So I mean, I think that's he was like voter issue first and then showed how our party fixes that, as opposed to just like, you know what,
Instead of
all I
just
gotta do is,
ideology.
yeah.
Yeah, and there were people outside of New York who were watching the race because it's the mayor of New York. People will pay attention, and especially when when there's such a stark contrast between the primary opponents, that people are attracted to it because they want to be able to give their 2 cents worth. And there were people across the country who swear up and down they're establishment Democrats, and they were horrified. I mean, scared to death of this Zoran Mondami and the socialist takeover, which is purely talking points from the Trump people. And they just took it hook, line, and sinker because it was something scary enough. See, I kind of disagree with you, Hannah, on at least the point about that. The parties are kind of alike somehow in the basest form. They must want what is good for people and what is good for helping people. And that I disagree with that statement because I think that the two parties have a very stark contrast. It is most revealed in the current forms that both of the parties take, but I think that it's basically the same
One's
for
evil and one's indifferent. I don't know.
Right.
Not a lot of heroes going around.
See, once again, I don't know that I'd agree with you there, but I would say that for 100 years, the Republicans have not been looking out for people, and that's why they eventually turned to the culture wars, because it was easier to explain for them. They didn't lose on it automatically when it was talked about, and it gave them a foothold to create community, because hate is a value too, and it works and it sells, and it does so brilliantly. Look at where we are, and tell me
Mhm.
that it's not true. It may not be comfortable. But I think it's very much true, and I think that there's a very sound difference between the two. But there's also kind of a difference between, so a place where that's a little closer together is between the establishment Democrats and the progressive Democrats. Um, and actually, you had mentioned fella down in Texas who you thought was interesting.
Salarico.
Tellerico, but Castro, Julio
Oh yeah,
Castro.
Julian Castro.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think that I I should have been more prepared and had a specific thing, but I think that he just is one of those people who he seems to talk about issues, right? He has opinions on uh things that are like people are running into, not just like um I don't know, not just like broad stuff. I have a friend who likes him because he had like an opinion on what was happening in like Hong Kong with the Chinese government, and like that's something that like you would have to like look into and think about. And I mean, you could come up with an opinion, I guess, but like it's not a clear opinion. It's not a culture war opinion. It's not a hot button issue. Well, it is in China, but it's not a hot button issue here, and things like that. But it's like he had clearly been invested. I feel like when people ask like what I would like in a politician, I like the idea that like as like sort of a self-identified geek. I like somebody who is a geek if their geekdom was politics. If they're just like, oh man, I'm really excited by like how this stuff works, that would be great. Um, and I think he seems like that kind of person who just like is really interested in this stuff.
Well, I believe when Elizabeth Warren was running for president, I believe he was her running mate,
Hmm.
and for that very same thing, I think they both have that they both have that interest in how things governmentally work and how you can make them work, and what's something that actually helps people, and that is considered, it's considered a niche. It's a niche sort of thing when it should be everybody. They can come
Yeah,
from different positions, but they should all be coming to a more common goal of helping Americans.
yeah. Well, I thought about bringing up Warren because if I remember correctly, her like sort of origin story is she's a teacher that took her students down to Washington to like show them like this is how government works, and then was like, oh, this is not working well at all.
Yes, it
Um,
doesn't work.
but it's interesting not to. This would fit the like conservative talking point, but as a trans person, one of the things that's interesting is being a member unintentionally in the culture war is like obviously a lot of it is like scary, but also a lot of it is like stuff I don't want to have to care about. Um, like yeah, and when people are like, "Oh, what are these people up to?" and I'm like, "I did nothing today. I sat at home, I played with my dogs, I applied for some jobs, I don't know, made
Well,
dinner."
and if I can ask a question, exactly how does that affect your riding a bus?
True. Well, the looking for a job part, the free buses do appeal to me. Um, but no, I mean, it's just so interesting to be like, and I'm sure anybody who's a part of the culture war, right? Like, not to reduce it, but a lot of people that ICE are picking up are just people going about their day. And they have like, I don't want to say real things, but I mean, like, you think about like, what's actually the issue is the people who are not affected by these ICE raids have probably day-to-day concerns that the people who are affected by the ice raids also have. And what it would be more interesting as a politician who's like, what is the issue that appeals to the most amount of people or the whatever, as opposed to like picking a scapegoat and being like, hey, if we do whatever to them, then everybody's life will be better. But isn't it more better? Sorry, isn't it more better to just be like, let's talk about bus ridership or subway, like New York City, so many of us ride public transportation, and housing is difficult for everybody, be they, trans or undocumented or a conservative person who came over here on the Mayflower or whatever, like rental income, transportation, grocery prices, Mamdani's like big things. Those are relevant to everyone. And like, wouldn't I rather spend so much time about that than like you see some of these, like when Utah like passed a rule that like trans women couldn't be on the like high school sports teams. It's like, that's one person in the whole state. That's where you're putting your energy. Um, and I feel like it's, to return to the subject of establishment versus progressive, so much of the establishment is getting caught up in that. Um, and they're like just being like, they're letting the conservatives set the stage and they're fighting against it, as opposed to being like, I don't have to play your game. I don't have to play by your rules. Like, this is a thing that's actually important. Um, because if the conservatives are they're setting the rules and they're setting the game and they're setting the whatever, they're going to, of course, build in advantages. But why not just have a progressive or somebody who's just like, look, none of this stuff, not that it's not important, respect to people's feelings, but like, let's talk about rent. That applies to almost every New Yorker. Sure, there's a handful of New Yorker who own their houses, and that's great. But if not that, then transportation. And if not that, and a lot of people who own their own houses are probably older people on fixed incomes who are having grocery issues when the grocery prices go up. So I just feel like, one of the things about Mamdani is that a lot of his issues are just, they're important to everybody.
Yep, excellent point. Excellent point.
So,
Tom, did you want to have anything in on this, the establishment progressive thing, and before we move on?
Absolutely. You bet. I always enjoy this segment because there is a real rift. There is a real contrast between the establishment and the progressive. I feel like the establishment has overstayed its welcome and it's suppressing progress. And I don't like it. And I think the election between Mamdani and Cuomo was incredibly telling. By the end, you had Trump endorsing Cuomo. Virtually, if you can get Trump and the Democratic establishment candidate to align against a progressive, that's a problem in the Democratic Party. In my opinion, they should not be closer together than Dems and progressives.
I don't think you can blame the Dems for that. I think you can blame the flight books on the Lolita Express more than you can blame the Democrats for that. But
well,
go ahead.
Wait, wasn't the Democratic Party behind Cuomo?
The establishment, absolutely, yeah. Everybody thought he was going to win, so of course Trump got behind him.
So
Trump
they backed the guy who, again, Trump endorsed. It seems like an alignment of interests to me.
But the Trump endorsement, look, you could have empty peanut shells, and if there was some inkling that they might be able to win, Trump would endorse them.
Sure.
So Trump endorsement being I don't know.
I understand the Democratic Party can't control what Trump does, but they backed the greasiest piece of shit.
Well, exactly. Well,
against some guy who just wasn't ideologically perfect for them. They chose the wrong horse, and it's disturbing.
Follow the money.
Well, and it's unfortunate. The Democratic establishment is so afraid of their own shadow. But when you look at the conservative, like the Republicans will say, the Republican Party, I can't believe how different it is now than when I was younger. Like the first election I voted in versus, or like pre-election, maybe before I could even vote. But like it hasn't been that many years that we've gone through like the Tea Party and the alt-right and whatever. And like obviously the conservative side felt that it was to their advantage to shift much more conservative. And up to this point, it has been to their advantage, which is scary, but now the progressive side is like, oh no, what if we mess something up? It's like, but what if you embraced change?
I guess what bugs me is that it seems like establishment Democrats are more comfortable with establishment Republicans than they are with progressives, and it cheats. To me, it's an expression of big money guiding both of them in common areas because the little guy never seems to win anymore. We
Mhm.
never get, we barely. No, I'm wrong. You're gonna check me again.
I am. I am.
Well, I feel like the government could be doing more, and I I think it's an expression of motivations that don't come from the people. I know this segment has gone on way too long. Let me just throw out a couple other points. I don't understand how we could have been so surprised by Mamdani. It concerns me that Americans don't seem. It seems like the polls aren't always anywhere close to reality too often, and I don't know what that is. If it's something good or something bad, none of it's good. And I get the sense that the establishment Democrats, they calcify in their safe districts, just like Republicans do, and it leads to a condition where they're not serving the people as much and as well as I wish they did, or that I think they do. And I feel like it's stagnation. There are people that have been there too long, and when you don't flush the lines, I feel like it's not good. We don't progress.
I do want to mention two things, and
Please
then we
do.
can move
I can
on.
see you're being ever so polite. You can swear at me if you want to, Matt. I'll still be your friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And uh, in fact, if we do go a little bit long tonight, then we'll just go a little bit long tonight. But so we can cover at least one of the other two, if not both. But the 2 points that I wanted to make are one, certainly money plays a role in it, absolutely no doubt, and it is not an absolute. So, in other words, if you want to find out why Trump wound up endorsing Cuomo, one, because they're friends, they're friendly at least, but also more importantly, look at who Cuomo's big backers were. And all of his big backers were big Republican funders, and they got behind him because they were scared. And they also wound up, because of his being an establishment and knowing how to take orders, he wound up taking the Republican Party line on. And that's what didn't help him in the end. But yes, of course, then the big money guys went to Trump and said, "Hey, yeah, he's okay. Yeah, he's all right. He's a paisan, and don't worry about it. And we'll see him on the island later. You can talk about it, hash out any problem." But
Right.
so there, so that was in, and most likely because of everybody else that they knew the two of them. But I will say this: the money guy doesn't always win, and I love giving an example of Mike Bloomberg when he returned to the Democratic Party and ran for the Democratic nomination and spent something like $1 billion on the Guam caucus nomination for president. And it was the only one that he actually won out of any of the states or territories. So $1 billion got him Guam, didn't
Guam
get him president of the United States. So it's
sounds like
not
an appetizer.
and there's another example here in New York where another guy just went haywire and spent. Like Cuomo is a good example. A guy who went haywire because he had access to money. He did spend it, and he spent it everywhere. And everybody said, "Well, of course he's spending money. He's going to win." He didn't. He embarrassed himself, and he lost, and hopefully embarrassed the family name as well. But that
And
was
that's not
actually
easy to do.
well for
It's
the
like
Cuomo.
spitting on dog poop.
Well, if you go back before this generation, there were actually some really good,
Understood.
decent, honest Cuomo's, and then there was this group of guys, but allegedly, um, we'll see how that plays out. And so let's move on. Although I will say, this segment has certainly earned its place. For the first time we've had it, it seems to be able to generate a discussion. I think is fair to say.
Absolutely.
Um, let's do move on, and we'll do the other two a little bit on the fast side, but we'll at least try to get through them both, unless somebody yells "uncle." Let's look at the Epstein reflux, which is a thing that we've all gotten to suffer from. Um, there's a fellow up in Ohio, a guy named John Husted, and he was the Secretary of State for a while, and then now he's a senator. He got $3,500 from allegedly co-hosting Epstein's, pardon me, from alleged Epstein co-conspirator Leslie Wexner months before voting to block the Epstein Files Act. And as an Ohio judge ordered Wexner to testify in abuse lawsuits. So there's a lot of corruption in Ohio. we know it's there, and this guy's part of it. And a matter of fact, the Speaker of the Ohio House, a guy named Larry Householder, a few years back, was busted in one of the biggest political money. I mean, straight up old fashioned, give me the money, hand me the money, show me that you're handing me the money. Is there enough money? So it was straight up corruption. And it was so blatant that even the Republicans said, "No, this guy's done too much. He's getting out of here. He's going to lose the seat, and he's going to go to jail." And they made the right call. Biggest corruption since Teapot Dome, and this guy did it to screw energy policy. So Houston's not coming from exactly no background. Although I don't know much about the Wexner, the person Wexner, but feel free to chip in if you do. Representative Jay Paul accused the Department of Justice of spying on her searches of unrelated Epstein files. As Speaker Johnson calls DOJ surveillance of members reviewing the Epstein files not appropriate. So that's news in and of itself. Johnson saying that that the DOJ surveillance is inappropriate. Well, my gosh, I expect he'll clutch his pearls and maybe his purse, and maybe he can go sit with Susan Collins from Maine and talk about how disappointed they might be sometime soon.
Truly concerned.
Yes, we'll see where that takes us. But
With
right, I mean,
everything-
that's clearly wrong. Clearly in the wrong. The DOJ, whatever shenanigans they're up to again, they're clearly in the wrong. Please go ahead, Tom.
Oh no, I just was seconding your certainty that the powers that be are just very, very concerned on our behalf.
Disappointed almost.
You could say,
You could.
yeah, you could even say disappointed.
They will have some strongly worded things to say.
Surely.
Yeah.
A Hyatt executive chairman has had to step down from the position because he's in the Epstein files and not one of these tangential mentions. It's the "you gotta go" kind of mention. There are only 4 computers available on weekdays from 9 to 6 to view the Epstein files for Congress members, and everything is tracked. So when Lauren Boebert went in there and looked at the files, and Jamie Raskin went in there and looked at the files, and name your, the best known congressman that you know, if they've ever gotten a chance to get in there from the 4 seats that are available for the several hundred members of the Congress. The point being that everything is tracked as well. So we now know what Lauren Boebert, when she came out, she was fuming. She was very upset about what she saw, and she was irreconcilable in her her upset, and we actually know what she looked at if we get close on those trackers. Anything else about Epstein before we move on to our Trump dump?
No,
No,
but I would like to state I already know more about what Lauren Boebert gets up to than I would ever like to know.
I gotta hand it to her.
some people pay good money for those kinds of, those kind of entertainments. So.
You know what? I grew up in Colorado, and I was like, I've seen plays in that theater. I don't need to be that familiar
Don't
with
need to know
it.
that happened.
No.
Oh wow! All right, so for our final issue, as is commonly done in these days, this is time for our Trump dump, and we've got floating the idea that he's now floating the idea that elections have to run on a NTL level. I don't know enough to know what
National,
that means.
National.
National level. I see an abbreviation. Um, so yeah, so he's now floating and wants things on a national level because he thinks he has more control over that and that he can be disruptive and put in the results that he wants. Just another 11,780, blah blah blah, and he could do that if it were nationally run. But that's why it's always been run on the county level. The very point has been as a safeguard against, well, in this case, a fascist, but again, against anyone who would try to overthrow the election. Doesn't have to be a fascist.
Broadly, things that prevent fascism are also just good in general, even without fascism.
They tend to be a good set of rules to go by. I
Yeah.
agree. I do. So, of course, and a perfect example of this is that he had investigators go down to Georgia and seize voting machines. We don't know what's going to happen with those, but we can pretty much guess that it's not just a cleaning and being returned. This is about checking the machines, trying to figure out how to rig the machines, maybe even putting in information now to see if they can get it to count towards the election in November. This is, as they say, up to no good. Donald Trump, his DOJ fired Donald Kinsella as the New Jersey federal prosecutor via email just 5 hours after the judge appointed him to replace John Sarcone. I believe he was the one who was named to be an attorney general, and then the judge said, "You don't have any of the. You're just not appropriate. You were never meant to be appropriate. You're not allowed to be here. Please leave." And that was after he not only Sarcone had ensconced himself in the Department of Justice, but had already started a so-called working group to look at how to pursue the Agenda 2025 goals. Quite a guy, and certainly a Trump ally. But then he was barred from overstaying his term because they were all made. And part of that, the reason for that is not just because he was made an attorney general, but he was made an acting attorney general. And when you get to the acting positions, what you get is you don't have to have the Senate confirm the person, but you also don't get them forever. You get them for whatever 100 and X day, 120, 150 days, and then their term is up because they're only meant to be there until you get someone in front of the Senate so that the Senate can advise and consent. But enough of that Constitution stuff. After 88 years, Gallup will no longer measure presidential approval ratings because Donald Trump's ratings recently were so poor, the lowest they've been, and so poor that Gallup decided to quit.
Look away, child.
Exactly. Absolutely bizarre. Yeah, so he went down from 48%, or pardon me, from 47% in February to 37% in December, and now only 8% in the U.S. see immigration as the biggest problem, as he's been promoting for years. And because of all that, adios, Gallup goes to the sunset. Citing Orwell's 1984, judges ordered Trump's administration to return slavery exhibits removed from the Philadelphia museum they were in. This is so offensive and bizarre and the most desperate type of trying to rewrite history that it's, I don't know. I just vomited in my mouth a little bit. How about you?
Yet the Confederate statues, those are allowed to keep rolling, apparently.
Yeah, right, right. Those went untouched by Trump, who I believe came out with what it was the best of both worlds. Oh, there were good people on both sides. Oh, that's only Nazis. He says
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, my
Um, yeah. A rich text of things Trump has been up to. Um, so there's also that election voter ID law he's trying to get passed, and then when people are like, "It passed the House but not the Senate," he's like, "Oh no, I'm just going to make it the law anyway," or something. Um, what a guy! Um, it's there's no like there's no evidence. It's layers. There's like no evidence of widespread voter fraud. Um, and I don't know if they think that these people are going to show up and just vote 10 times in a day. And if so, that's really not doing anything. But it's also interesting to think that many other countries uh, are working to increase their voter turnout with like uh, required voting, whereas we're trying to decrease it. Um, and the really the why doesn't matter. You should want people to vote.
Yeah, to all those people who talk about voting not mattering, if it didn't matter, why are they trying so hard to stop it? And
Right.
shouldn't that be a sign to you that you need to get your ass to the polls every time, every year, or
It
whenever
should
there's an
be
election?
voting should be literally non-controversial. So if you're stopping people from voting, you're probably doing something bad.
Too true. Too true. Tom, anything on Trump or voting?
My feelings on the man are well known.
I refer you to my previous comment.
Right.
That's great. Well, in that case, I believe it's time for our time honored tradition of the Epstein count up. This is the number of days since the unredacted Epstein list has not been released. And that number today is actually a big one. It's day 3,900. Some fireworks or something.
Ta-da!
Confetti? I don't
Dun,
know. Yeah.
dun, dun.
I feel like that's the amount of times Trump has been named in the ones that are redacted.
Right,
That reduced to 10%.
Yeah.
right.
So one per day.
Exactly. Yeah, at least. Yeah, right. Yeah,
While we're on the subject, though, the Justice Department this week announced that, correct me if I'm wrong, I understand they announced that they've released everything that needs released, and nice work, people. Thanks, and good night. I mean, do they think they're done, and what are we doing about that?
well, I believe that's the same guy who had come out and said that they didn't exist at one point. So I don't know. I think maybe he was exaggerating for effect, maybe, or trying to
Hmm.
get a news story going, or
Maybe I
I
missed it.
don't.
Who's the guy? Who's the guy? The only guy I know that said that is Pam. I want to say Pam Bondi, and she's not a guy.
Well, but yeah, you are correct. She's the one who said that she had it on her disk and then she didn't have it on her desk because it didn't exist. And if somebody from over there is now saying that they've released everything they can or they released everything they will, that I would assume comes from the boss, from Pam Bondi, right?
Gotcha.
don't
Yeah,
think
they're
it's
with the same level of integrity. But I mean, if she declares that, then they're just saying, well, fuck you. You're going to have to come get it. Fight me for it.
well, my point is, are they really? I mean, they said it didn't exist at all. So here we are looking at it. So it does exist, and they said it didn't. So they were clearly bullshitting, and it was it didn't mean anything. Like anything they say, just about anything they say is not going to be the truth and not going to be worthwhile. It may help get a news story started, and people will be excited because they want to get both sides. But at the
Well,
same time, when everything they say is a lie, it's not worth the time to consider it.
okay. So does that mean you expect there to be more releases?
I'll bet you. Yeah, I bet you there'll be more exist. They'll release them and they'll say, "Oh, did we say we weren't going to release them?" Well, what we meant
Mm,
was we were
okay.
going to release a couple more, and
Gotcha.
then we're not going to release anymore because there won't be anything else to release.
Matt, I would like to underline the wisdom in what you said. That is, I have to stop and remind myself, it's just a thing they said. Sometimes I go to put weight on that foot, and there's no reason to. Like Trump say, people say, "Oh, Trump, he never drinks," and he probably doesn't. He seems like the type of uptight asshole who doesn't know how to enjoy a cocktail. But beyond that, we just say that because that's what he says. He always brags about he's a teetotaler and whatever. He has a little wine with his cracker at church. But I remember the wave, like when he said that. I remember when it came out and people were just like parroted it, and I'm like, you don't know that though. He could be swimming in tequila. It's just a thing he said, and you can't anyway. So thank you for reminding me. It's just a thing they said. Don't get all hung up on it. It'll change tomorrow.
Yeah, I want T-shirts.
That said, I'm going to use this term. That's all that I'm going to give you. I'm going to use that next time I have a bill to pay or anything like that. I'll be like, no, I gave you everything that you need to be given. That's fine.
Nice.
So yeah, new plan.
Let us know how that works out.
I'm sure it'll be
Keep
fine.
us updated. Absolutely.
That's not what got Henry David Thoreau arrested. I'm sure it'll be fine if I do it.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, and dear viewer, thank you for joining us at PolitiPod Live for Political Talk. You're welcome to join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific and 9 p.m. Eastern, right here for PolitiPod Live. And if you want political laughs, join us and a half dozen of our friends for our monthly political comedy podcast, PolitiPod. You'll find over at soundcloud.com/PolitiPod. This is Matt Nisanoff.
Hannah
Tom
Soldner?
Bickle nailed
I'm
it.
Hannah Soldner. You know
A
what?
well
He's Tom Bickle.
a well-oiled machine. That's what this is.
Made for show.
That's great. Yeah. Goodbye.